I recently did my Tubi horror film recommendations because the UK has finally got Tubi, and I was thinking which streaming platform to do next. I do want to do some more recommendations for free streaming platforms. I thought I would do one for Netflix today because although it's not a free streaming platform, so many people have Netflix. It is one of the most popular streaming services, and they do have a lot of horror films, some better than others. They have quite a few popular horror films which I'm not going to talk about today, like Talk to Me, Bodies, 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 Nope, Get Out. So many good ones, but they are more well known. So today I'm going to talk about a few that are lesser known. Maybe there will be one or two on this list that you haven't seen or maybe have been thinking about watching, and this can give you a push to watch it, or it may just inspire a rewatch. So my first recommendation is Incantation. This is actually a Taiwanese found footage horror film, and as if I don't say it already enough, but I absolutely love a good found footage horror film. They're just the ones that feel the most realistic. This film is actually loosely based off of a really awful and tragic incident that I wish I didn't read up about, but I did want to do some research for this video and didn't realise that it was actually inspired by a true event. So let this be a warning: if you are going to look into this film, then there is some extremely disturbing content around it, but this film is nowhere near as disturbing as the actual case that it was loosely based on. In 2022, this actually became the highest grossing Taiwanese horror film, which is really cool. Incantation follows a woman who becomes cursed after breaking a religious taboo. This results in her daughter becoming the target of an evil paranormal entity, so she must find a way to break the curse and save her daughter. Like with a lot of found footage films, this has a really creepy feel throughout, and although it doesn't rely on jump scares, it does have some really good jump scares. This next recommendation is really freaky, and even thinking about the horror elements of another you just randomly turning up one day literally sends shivers down my spine. Cam follows Alice, who is an online cam girl. One day she logs on to find a doppelganger of herself that has taken over her account and is trying to take over her life. I absolutely love the neon and the use of colour in this one. I feel like we're used to so many horror films being so dark and dingy, and half the time we can't even see what's going on because it's in the pitch black, so I really do appreciate a colourful horror film. Cam is very psychological, and it is one that may not answer all of your questions, but I feel like that is half the fun of it. I believe this one is a Netflix original that went straight to Netflix, but I would have loved to have seen this in the cinema. This was actually only shot in 20 days, which is so impressive because the production of it is so good, and also the screenwriter was a former cam girl herself. My next recommendation is actually a film that came out last year, and I feel like I do talk about it a lot. I feel like it's because it was just October and that's the month where I do speak about this film a lot, but I just didn't want to leave this one off the list, and that is the film Cobweb. From the outside they seem like a happy family, but from the inside Peter is struggling with noises that keep him awake and parents that say that they don't believe him. As I just said, this one is definitely best watched in October, but I do think it's really good if maybe you are missing October or Halloween. If you put this one on, it will honestly transport you back to that time. It has a really creepy feel throughout, and the setting is really cool with lots of pumpkins and a creepy house. There is one nighttime scene with some really terrifying imagery, and that honestly sticks in my head since the first time I saw it in cinemas. It reminds me of something that we would see in a film like Insidious or The Conjuring. The CGI at the end is my only real issue with this film, but I can overlook it because I do really love the plot, the characters and the twist. I would say go in with an open mind, don't expect too much, and just enjoy it as a fun, spooky Halloween film. My next recommendation is The Silence. This one is very similar to A Quiet Place. The Silence is based off of a book of the same name, and I do believe that is also where A Quiet Place got its inspiration from too, which is why they are both so similar. The Silence follows a family battling for survival and taking shelter from otherworldly creatures that are triggered by noise. I know that does sound exactly like A Quiet Place, but you just have to think about it as being kind of in the same universe but different stories. The creatures are a bit different, and this one reminds me very much of The Walking Dead, especially as the creatures aren't always the main focus, there are other threats too. My next recommendation is quite a fun one, and that is The Babysitter. This is for fans of silly horror comedies like Lisa Frankenstein, Happy Death Day, Freaky, and that sort of thing. This follows a 12-year-old boy who discovers his babysitter is planning to sacrifice him as part of a cult ritual. It's now him versus his babysitter and her satanic friends. Although this one is silly, it is also quite violent and gory. Samara Weaving plays the lead role as the babysitter, and she is amazing as always. There is also a sequel to this on Netflix called The Babysitter Killer Queen. I am yet to watch that one, so I don't know if it's very good or not, but maybe if you've seen it you can let me know. My next recommendation is the polar opposite to the last recommendation. It isn't fun or silly at all, and definitely not light-hearted, and that is Calibre. This one does have some disturbing themes, definitely won't leave you in a good mood. Calibre follows two friends who go on a hunting trip. Something awful goes wrong on this trip, causing a series of traumatizing events. The acting in this film is incredible, especially as the two main characters have to show a lot of extreme emotions, and they do that really well. You as a viewer almost feel like you're going through this with them. It almost reminds me of Eden Lake in some aspects and with how it makes you feel. This is set in the Scottish Highlands, so although the story is really tragic, visually the film is beautiful and scenic for the most part. My next recommendation is The Platform. This is a Spanish horror film. In this dystopian prison, inmates are fed from a moving platform that travels down the hundreds of floors that the prisoners are on. At the top floor, the platform is full of food, and prisoners are only meant to eat what's theirs so that there is enough food for everyone. But those on the higher levels eat more than their fair share, causing those on the lower levels to starve. One man decides to take action. I really like the concept of the platform. It reminds me of other enclosed dystopian locations like in the Cube films. This film does feel really unique, and although we do have films with similar elements, it definitely isn't really like anything that we've seen before. There is some disturbing aspects to it, and there is a few scenes that make me feel really uncomfortable. There are actually 333 platforms in the prison with 2 prisoners on each level, making 666 prisoners in total, which is quite fitting as this prison definitely is some sort of hell. The second film, The Platform 2, was actually released this year, but it did end up being quite bad, so I definitely don't recommend watching that one because it just takes away from how good the first one is. My next recommendation is the 2019 film Villains. A couple of amateur robbers break into a family home. Whilst they are there, they realise they may have chosen the wrong house to mess with. The cast in this film is amazing. The lead girl is played by Micah Monroe, which is one of my favourite actors in horror and thriller films, and the other lead is actually played by Bill Skarsgård, who you may know as Pennywise from It and It Chapter 2, and he's going to be in Robert Eggers' adaptation of Nosferatu that comes out at the end of this year. This film is so fun, and I just feel like no one really speaks about it. It's only an hour and a half, which I think is perfect for this type of horror comedy. My next recommendation is The Autopsy of Jane Doe. This is a little more well known than the other ones, but if by chance you haven't seen it, then I definitely recommend it. A father and son pathologist duo end up working late once the body of a young woman gets brought in by the police. They spend hours in the morgue trying to figure out the mystery of what happened to her. This film definitely keeps you on your toes. There are so many chilling moments and really good jump scares. I absolutely love the setting of a morgue for a horror film. There are parts where all the lights go off or the lights flash, and you just know that there's going to be something lurking in the corner or something's going to happen, and it's just going to scare the life out of you, because this is about them both trying to figure out what's happened to this woman that's been brought in. This gives it a really fun mystery element that's almost interactive. As the viewer, it's as if you are trying to figure out the mystery of what's happened to her alongside them. Another thing that I really love about this film is how the characters are written and the relationship of the characters. They just really do seem like real people, which definitely makes a horror film so much more scary if the characters and other elements are actually believable. So that's a few of my Netflix horror recommendations. Hopefully you found something that you haven't seen before, and if you have any recommendations, please let me know in the comments. And I do also have a few more that I wasn't sure if I should put on this list or not, so if you're interested in a part 2, then that is definitely something that I could do. As always, thank you for supporting my channel and watching this video. I will see you again in another one soon.